This is my true story. It happened on Christmas night, with the table full, lights glowing, and family gathered. I wore the same old coat I had worn for years, the one that carried my winters, the one that kept me warm when money was tight. My daughter looked at me, smirked, and said in front of everyone, "Still wearing rags, Dad? You look like Charity came late." The table laughed. I stayed silent. But I did not forget. The very next day, I did something that shocked everyone. Before I tell you, tell me where you're watching from, and subscribe so more people hear my story. I worked through winters when the snow cut through my boots, when the holes let in cold water and froze my toes. I worked through summers when sweat ran down my back, soaking my shirt until it clung like a second skin. I carried wood, lifted stone, bent my back to jobs that left my hands rough and cracked. All of it was for my children. I saved every coin I could so they would not know hunger. I saved so they would not know what it meant to go to bed with an empty stomach or to wake up worried about rent. There were nights when I came home with nothing but bread for myself, but shoes for them. There were days when I walked in the rain without a coat so they could have uniforms for school. My pride was not in clothes, not in fancy meals, not in gold. My pride was in the simple things: seeing them eat, seeing them sleep warm, seeing them smile. I told myself that was enough, and for many years, it was. Even as time passed and money grew, I did not change. I wore simple clothes, the same old coat year after year, patched where it tore, buttoned where it loosened. People might have looked and thought I was poor, but I was not poor in heart. I had built a life from sweat, and I was proud of it. Every thread in that coat held a memory, of nights by the fire, of mornings leaving early for work, of sacrifices I made to keep the family strong. I thought my children understood. I thought they remembered the years when we had nothing and how hard I fought to change that. I thought they would see my clothes not as shame, but as proof of love, proof of survival, proof of sacrifice. But children forget. Comfort makes them blind to the cost that built it. They grow into soft hands and soft voices, not knowing the storms that carried them here. When I looked at my daughter, I did not see someone poor. I saw someone full of vanity, someone who wanted glitter more than truth. She had closets full of clothes, rings on her fingers, shoes lined in rows. All of that came because I bent my back to work, because I lived in silence and sacrifice. But she forgot. She thought it was her right. She thought it was her own doing. And so I stayed in my old coat, not because I needed to, but because it reminded me who I was. It reminded me of the battles I had survived. It reminded me that pride is not found in fabric, but in endurance. My coat was not rags. My coat was memory. My coat was proof. But to her, it was nothing but a joke. My daughter grew up in comfort she never earned. She had never seen the hunger I had known as a boy. She had never walked to school in shoes with holes, or patched the same dress year after year. Instead, she lived with closets full of choices. Her hangers carried colors from every season, her shelves stacked with shoes she wore once and forgot. Rings glimmered on her fingers, bracelets on her wrists, perfumes lined on her dresser. Her world was shine, and shine became her hunger. She craved the look of wealth, not the weight of work. Every dinner she hosted was about appearance. Every picture she shared was about showing more than the next person. She wanted to be seen, to be admired, to be envied. She chased vanity the way I once chased wages. But while my sweat built something real, her vanity built nothing. It was empty glitter, bright for a moment, then fading in the dark. I watched her walk into rooms with her head high, her dress new, her shoes polished. She smiled when people praised her, smiled wider when their eyes lingered on her jewelry. But she forgot who had bought her first shoes. She forgot who had worked through storms so she could sit in warmth. She forgot who paid for the foundation she stood on. Her pride erased her memory, and she thought she had risen alone. Sometimes she looked at me with pity, sometimes with disdain. "You should buy new clothes, Dad," she said once, laughing. "You don't have to look so old-fashioned." I smiled. But inside, I thought, old-fashioned built the roof over your head. Old-fashioned paid the bills when you were too small to lift a finger. Old-fashioned is the reason you can laugh now. But I never said it. I stayed silent, letting her live in her glitter. The gap between us widened with each year. She climbed into a world of vanity, forgetting the ladder I had built. She loved the shine more than the substance. She wanted dresses over dignity, parties over respect. And I let her because I thought maybe one day she would see through it, maybe one day she would remember the truth. But she didn't. The glitter blinded her too much. She measured worth by what she wore. I measured worth by what I endured. She thought her new dresses gave her power. She did not know those same dresses could be stripped away in one simple move because they were not truly hers. They were borrowed comfort, built on my name. She thought she mocked me for my coat. In truth, she mocked the very hands that kept her life shining. Christmas is supposed to be a time of warmth. A time when family gathers, when laughter fills the room, when old scars are forgotten for one night. I walked into the dining room wearing my old coat, the one I had worn through winters, the one that carried 30 years of memory in its seams. The table was set with lights and fine dishes. My daughter sat at the center, glowing in her new red dress, her friends and cousins around her, the air thick with chatter. I sat quietly, happy just to be there. I did not care about gifts, about clothes, about the glitter she wore. I cared only about sharing a meal with family. But to her, my presence was not enough. She looked at me, her eyes scanning my coat, and a smirk curled on her lips. In front of everyone, with a voice sharp enough to cut through the music, she said, "Still wearing rags, Dad? You look like Charity came late this year." The words hung in the air like smoke. For a second, the table was silent. Then laughter erupted. Some covered their mouths, some laughed freely, some looked away. I sat still, my coat buttoned tight, my fork resting on the plate. I did not speak. I did not shout. I chewed my food slowly, my face calm. But inside, her words sank deep, cutting deeper than the coldest winter I had ever survived. I looked around that table and saw her pride. She wanted everyone to see her power, her shine, her success. She wanted to make me small so she could stand taller. My old coat, the one that had walked through storms to pay for her dresses, had become her joke. My sacrifice had become her punchline. And the people laughed with her, not knowing the truth. I nodded once, forced a smile, and let the laughter pass. But something inside me shifted. The years of silence, the years of patience, the years of swallowing every slight. They hardened in that moment. I realized she saw me not as the father who gave her everything, but as a relic, something to mock, something to dismiss. She thought I had no power left. She thought the coat on my back was proof of weakness. But what she forgot was simple. Every dress she wore, every card she swiped, every dinner she hosted lived on my name, not hers. She thought she was mocking me. In truth, she was mocking the very man who held her life together. And while she laughed, I stayed quiet, already planning. That Christmas dinner, she stripped me of dignity in front of family. But the next day, I would strip her of everything she thought was hers. I smiled that night at Christmas dinner. I nodded. I lifted my fork. I chewed my food slow. And to the eyes of everyone around that table, I looked calm. I looked like a man too old to fight back, too gentle to answer. But inside, her words were echoing like knives in my chest. She had taken 30 years of sacrifice, 30 years of sweat, 30 years of nights I went without, and she reduced it to one cruel joke about fabric, one cruel laugh about an old coat. I sat in silence, but the silence was not empty. It was heavy, filling me with something I had not felt in years. The sting of humiliation mixed with the burn of cold resolve. I thought of the winters when I worked long shifts with holes in my boots. I thought of the nights when I wore the same coat year after year because buying a new one meant food for her instead. I remembered the days when she was young and asked for things, and I found a way, even if it meant I wore the same shirt until it was threadbare. Those memories rose inside me as I listened to the laughter at the table. She forgot all of that. She forgot the pain I endured so she would never know it. She forgot the sacrifices I buried so deep they became invisible. All she saw was the coat. All she saw was the chance to sneer. As I chewed, my mind was not on the food. It was on her face. The smirk, the tilt of her head, the way she wanted everyone to look at her, not at me. She wanted the power. She wanted the room to laugh with her, not at her. And she got it. I gave her no reaction, no defense, nothing to fuel her game. But deep inside, I felt a line break. A line I had never thought would snap. The line between patience and action. The wound she gave me was not on my skin. It was inside, deep, where words cut sharper than any blade. Her voice replayed in my head as the night went on. "Still wearing rags, Dad? You look like charity came late." Over and over I heard it. It mixed with the laughter. It mixed with the clinking of glasses and the rustle of wrapping paper. It grew heavier with each second until it was no longer pain. It was fire. Fire I kept quiet, hidden behind my smile, hidden behind my calm face, hidden behind my silence. Silence is often mistaken for weakness. That night, my silence was strength. It was the silence of a man who had endured storms far colder than the sneer of a daughter. It was the silence of a man who once walked miles in the snow just to earn a wage, a man who once went hungry so his child could eat. Compared to that, her words were small. They wounded me, yes, but they also reminded me of something I had forgotten, that I still held power. She had mocked me thinking I was powerless. But the truth was, her entire life sat on my signature. Every card in her wallet, every purchase she flaunted, every dinner she hosted, all of it was tied to me. She had forgotten. I had not. As I sat there, I decided something. I would not answer her insult with more words. I would not defend myself at that table. I would not lower myself to shout or argue. I would not try to remind her of my sacrifices, because people blinded by pride never listen. No, I would let her laugh that night. I would let her enjoy her joke. I would let her feel strong, because the very next day, I would take it all away. The wound stayed raw as the night dragged on. I watched her raise her glass. I watched her friends laugh beside her. I watched her walk past me in her new dress, head high, like a queen in her own castle. She thought the coat I wore was weakness. She thought the silence I kept was surrender. She did not see that both were shields. She did not see that I had already begun to sharpen the knife she handed me with her own words. I left the table that night with a quiet smile. My body felt heavy, but my heart was set. I walked slowly to my room, sat on my bed, and let the wound burn. I did not cry. I did not speak. I only sat in the dark, listening to the house grow quiet, listening to the sound of her laughter fading into the distance. And in that silence, I made my choice. She had humiliated me in front of everyone. I would humiliate her in front of herself. She had mocked me for wearing old clothes. I would strip her of new ones. She had forgotten the power of my signature. I would remind her. The wound she gave me became the spark. The silence I held became the weapon. By the time I finally lay down that night, I was not the same man who had walked into Christmas dinner. I was not the father who had endured insult after insult. I was not the man in the old coat who bowed his head and smiled through pain. I was a man ready to remind his daughter that every thread of her life had been woven by my hand, and I could pull those threads loose whenever I chose. What my daughter forgot that night at Christmas dinner was the simplest truth of all. Her life was not hers. Every dress she wore, every car she drove, every dinner she hosted, every card she swiped, it all came from me. Her glitter was borrowed. Her shine was not built by her own hands. It lived on my signature. The banks did not trust her. The lenders did not trust her. They trusted me. The name on those papers was mine. The roof she bragged about, the parties she threw, the credit cards she loved to flash. All of it flowed from accounts I created, not hers. When she mocked my coat, she mocked the very man who made her comfort possible. She forgot the years I carried her when she was small, the years I paid for her schooling, the years I worked through cold and heat so she could grow without hunger. She forgot that her independence was nothing but an illusion built on my back. She thought her cards made her powerful. She thought her closets made her strong. But they were all strings tied to my hand. She never saw the strings. She thought she was free. But I knew, and I never forgot. Her life had become a show. She lived for appearances, for the glitter of gold, for the sound of people praising her. She wore pride like a crown. But crowns can be stolen, and hers was only mine on loan. She thought she had power because people cheered for her at the table. But what she had was dependence, dressed as strength. And the one she mocked was the one holding the switch that could end it all. As I sat that night, the wound in my chest still raw, I thought about how easy it would be. A single call, one instruction to the bank, a few numbers read out to a clerk. That was all it would take. In less than a minute, her cards would stop working. In less than a minute, her glitter would fade. Her friends would watch as she tried to pay and failed. Her smile would break when the machine said, "Declined." The same girl who mocked me for wearing an old coat would be left standing, powerless, embarrassed, stripped of the comfort she thought was hers forever. She thought the balance of power was hers. She thought age had weakened me, that my silence meant surrender, that my coat meant poverty. But she forgot the truth. I still held the pen. I still held the power. And I had held it for decades, never using it, always protecting her, always making sure she never felt fear. But when she chose to humiliate me, she gave me reason to use it. She handed me the weapon by forgetting who I was. The power she forgot was not loud. It was not shown in fancy cars or clothes. It was quiet. It was in the signature the banks respected, in the accounts she had no access to, in the quiet control of money that never spoke until it needed to. That power had kept her life easy, and that power could make her life crumble. And now it was time to remind her. I went to bed that night with her laughter still echoing, but I no longer felt weak. I no longer felt humiliated. I felt steady. Because I remembered what she forgot. Everything she had came from me, and I could end it all with one phone call. That night, after the Christmas dinner ended and the house grew quiet, I sat alone in the living room. The glow of the Christmas tree lights flickered across the walls, soft and warm. But inside me, there was no warmth left. Her words kept replaying. Her laugh kept echoing. "Still wearing rags, Dad? You look like charity came late." It circled my head like a bell that would not stop ringing. I tried to close my eyes, but when I did, I saw her smirk. I heard the laughter of the others at the table. I felt the sting in my chest all over again. Sleep would not come. I sat in my chair, hands folded, staring at the tree. Each ornament hung bright, each light blinking, but all I saw was her face. All I felt was the humiliation. She had stripped me of dignity in front of family, in front of guests, in front of everyone. 30 years of sacrifice thrown aside as a joke. My coat, my proof of survival, turned into her weapon. I could forgive many things, but not this. Respect is the one thing a child owes a parent. She had torn that respect into pieces. Hour after hour passed. Midnight turned to 1, 1 turned to 2. Still I sat, awake, my mind cold and sharp. By 3, I was no longer hurt. I was no longer even angry. I was resolved. Pain had hardened into steel. If she thought I was weak, if she thought I had no power, she would learn. She wanted to laugh at old clothes. I would strip her of new ones. She wanted to mock my dignity. I would take away her vanity. She wanted the table to see me small. I would make her small in front of herself. The decision was not made in fire. It was made in ice. Calm, certain, final. I would not shout at her. I would not tell her what I was going to do. I would not give her the chance to prepare or fight back. I would let her wake in comfort, walk with pride, reach for her card, and only then would the truth strike her. Only then would she see what she had forgotten, that every thread of her life was mine to cut. I rose from my chair and walked to the window. Outside, the world was still. Snow lay across the ground, glowing under the streetlights. The silence was deep, but it matched the silence in me. The decision was made. Tomorrow would not be like today. Tomorrow her world would crack the way mine had cracked at that table. I went back to bed before the sun rose. I did not sleep, but I did not need to. Sleep is for the weak, and that night I was not weak anymore. That night, I was ready. By morning, the man in the old coat would remind his daughter who held the true power. I woke before dawn. The house was quiet, the tree lights were dim. My hands felt steady. My mind was clear. I dressed in my old coat, the same one she had mocked, and walked to the kitchen. I made tea and did not drink it. The kettle hissed, and the sound did not move me. I sat at the table and opened the drawer where I kept the small book of numbers. There, in my careful handwriting long before my daughter learned to spend, I had written down bank names and phone numbers. I had kept them because I trusted myself to be careful. That trust had not left me. I dialed the bank number with fingers that did not shake. The phone rang once, twice, and then a voice answered, calm and neutral. I spoke plainly. I gave my name. I gave the account number. I told them I was calling to review authorized cards and lines of credit tied to my accounts. The woman on the line asked for verification. I gave it. She asked questions I had been ready for. I answered each one. I did not hurry. I did not falter. My voice was clear, low, and even. I told her to list the authorized cardholders. The clerk read names, and my daughter's name came up, bright and familiar in the wood of my throat. I said, cancel them all. I did not explain. I did not say her name as a punishment. I said it as a fact. Cancel the cards and freeze any lines of credit linked to my accounts, I said. The clerk repeated the request, and I confirmed it. She asked if I wanted a temporary hold or a full cancellation. I chose full cancellation. I wanted no chance for a quick fix, no window for her to call and beg the bank to turn a machine back on. Full cancellation meant the plastic would not work, and the accounts would not accept her charges. She asked if I wanted to leave my daughter with any emergency access. I said no. I had done enough. I had covered dinners, school fees, late rent, and small emergencies for years. That was not the same as letting someone mock you in front of family. If she had needed help, she would have asked with respect. She had not. She had laughed. So I closed the door with no keys left inside. The clerk was polite. She warned me of the steps she would take. She told me she would send confirmation letters and apply holds on the cards. She told me the system would log my request and freeze spending immediately. I thanked her and ended the call. My hands were steady the whole time. I felt no rush, no flash of triumph. My heart did not race. Only the cool calm of someone who had waited and planned filled me. After the bank, I called the credit company. I gave them the authority to remove authorized users tied to my name. I asked them to block all pending charges and to notify me of any attempts. Then, I called the billing services for stores I knew she used. I canceled subscriptions she paid with my card. I cut the small, invisible threads that fed her life. I moved slowly and carefully, like a man undoing stitches that once held a shirt together. Each call was a small cut. Each confirmation was a knot pulled tight. I made a list as I worked. I wrote down what I had done. Canceled, card 1, card 2, lines of credit. Frozen, retail accounts, store accounts, subscriptions. I stopped the automatic transfers that paid for her monthly services. I set alerts for any attempt to use funds. The paper I held felt heavy in a way that was not bad. It felt final. It felt like truth. When the bank called back to confirm, I asked them to send the notices to the house. I did not want to watch her face when the postman brought the envelope. I did not want to stand at the window and see her panic. I had done what I had to do. Now the law and the machines would do the rest. I trusted that they would be swift. I thought about what would happen when she tried to pay for her coffee that morning. I smiled inside, not because I wanted to watch her fail, but because I wanted the lesson to be clean. I wanted no tricks left to hide behind. I wanted the simple sound of the machine saying, declined, to teach her that money tied to my name is not a toy to use while mocking the hands that fed it. Morning came. The house stirred. My daughter walked out the door in her red dress from the night before, hair done, phone in hand, coffee cup steaming. She kissed her partner on the cheek and stepped into the car with a laugh. I watched from the window, calm. I had my coat buttoned, and the cold outside did not bite me. It only sharpened the world into clear edges. I did not follow her that day. I had no wish to watch the moment of ruin up close. I wanted the world to teach her. The first message came quickly. Transaction declined, it read on her phone. Her laugh stopped. She tapped the screen, swiped again, tried another card she thought was different, and the same. Her smile turned to confusion, then to a tightness in her mouth. She pulled out another card, also declined. She walked back into the cafe, face flushing, and asked the barista. The barista looked at the screen. "Sorry, card not accepted," he said, polite but firm. She muttered something and left, cheeks hot. She called me that morning. Her voice was sharp, then sharp turned to panic, then panic to anger. "Dad," she said, "my card is not working." "What did you do?" I listened to her for a moment. Her words came in fast little waves, accusations wrapped around shame. I heard the party hangover in her tone, the thin hope that I would fix it quickly. I let the phone ring on the table. I did not pick it up. I did not answer. My silence was a new thing for her to face. The silence I gave back was the same silence she had used when she laughed at my coat. She drove to stores, to shops, to the bank branch. Each place turned her away the same way. "Card canceled," they said. She shouted at a clerk, "You must be wrong." The clerk shook his head and showed the notice. The notices had my name on them and the bank's stamp. They were clear. They were official. There was no room for a quick apology or a fast fix. The bank's systems had frozen at my request. Neighbors watched. Some of her friends had coffee with her and watched as her cards failed. Her face went white and then red. She tried to call credit companies, but the numbers routed to recorded messages that said an account had been closed by the primary holder. She begged over the phone to be let through. She texted messages and demanded explanations. She called her partner in tears. I heard snatches as people in the street whispered. I did not feel pride. I felt the cold calm of someone who acted when patience ended. She walked back home that afternoon, shoulders low, bag empty of purchases, head bowed. Her hands shook. The neighbors looked at her with new eyes. I closed the curtains and sat by the window, the room dark, the tree lights faint. I felt the weight lift a little from my chest. Not because she had lost money, but because she had lost the belief she could mock me without cost. I had not wanted to humiliate her like a child. I had wanted to teach her the cost of forgetting who gives you your life. That evening she came into the house facing me. Her eyes were wet. Her voice asked for answers. I did not shout. I did not bargain. I spoke one slow sentence. "You mocked me at the table. You made a choice." She opened her mouth and closed it. No matter what she said next, the bank notices had spoken louder. The machines had already done their work. The world had turned, and her glitter had dulled. I sat in my chair that night, the house quiet again, the ornaments blinking. I felt no joy. I felt relief. Relief that something had changed, that respect had returned in a small, sharp way. I knew this would not fix everything. Money can be found again. Pride can harden into new walls. But the lesson would not be easy to forget. For once, she would know the sound of her own life stopping because she had chosen to mock the man who built it. The execution was simple. It was not loud. It was not cruel. It was precise and clean. It used the same steady tool I had used to build life. The signature, the call, the instruction. I had trusted for years. Now I used my power once. The machine listened. The cards died. The lesson began. The next day was the beginning of her fall. It did not come with thunder. It came with little cracks in her world, each one louder than the last. She woke up still proud from the night before, but when she reached for her card to order breakfast online, the screen flashed, "Declined." She frowned, tried again, typed in numbers, checked the balance. The same word appeared, "Declined." She tried another card, also declined. Panic touched her face. She dressed quickly and went out, hoping it was a glitch. At the cafe, she ordered coffee and cake with friends. The cashier swiped the card, looked at the machine, and said politely, "Sorry, card not accepted." She tried another one. The one she called her emergency card, same message. Her friends watched her smile crack. The girl who laughed at me last night now flushed red in front of strangers. She mumbled something about the bank making a mistake, but the machine did not lie. The decline was real. She left the cafe without her order. Her friends whispered. One excused herself to leave early. Another stayed silent, looking at her with new eyes. By the time she reached her car, her phone was already buzzing with bank alerts. Account access removed. Authorization revoked. Please contact primary account holder. She called me. Her voice was sharp at first. Dad, my cards aren't working. Did you do something? I held the phone but did not answer. She called again and again, each time angrier, each time more desperate. I set the phone down and let it ring. Silence is heavy. She felt it now. By afternoon, she was at the bank branch, standing at the counter. The teller, polite but firm, explained the accounts she used were no longer open to her. She asked why. The teller pointed to the form with my name on it. She asked for access. The teller shook his head. She asked to speak to a manager. The manager said the same thing. The life she thought was hers was not hers anymore. She had mocked the man holding the keys, and now the keys had been turned. She drove home slow. Her eyes were red. The car, once full of shopping bags, was empty. She sat in the driveway for a long time, staring at the steering wheel. Inside, her phone buzzed with messages she did not open. Neighbors glanced through curtains. They had seen her pride before. They had heard her laughter at Christmas. Now they watched her sit still, head bowed, the glow gone. When she finally came inside, she did not smirk. She did not stand tall. She stood in the doorway, small. Her voice was soft when she asked, "Dad, please talk to me." I looked at her but did not speak. She started to explain how it was a misunderstanding, how she had been joking last night, how she never meant harm. Her words came fast, clumsy. They tumbled over each other like stones rolling downhill. I listened, but stayed silent. Not because I hated her, not because I wanted to hurt her, because silence was the only answer left. She had laughed at my coat, at my life, at my sacrifice. She had forgotten who built her world. Now she remembered. The banks had already taught her. My silence was just the echo. She tried to tell me she needed the cards to pay bills. She tried to tell me she needed the cards to keep her life running. I thought of the winters I had walked without a coat, of the nights I had gone to bed hungry so she would not. I thought of the humiliation at that table. I thought of her smirk, and I said nothing. Her tears were hers now. Her comfort was gone. In the days that followed, her parties shrank. Her posts online slowed. Friends stopped answering calls. The girl who mocked her father's old coat now could not afford her own shoes. Relatives whispered. Neighbors smiled quietly. She felt every eye on her when she left the house. Her pride deflated. Her vanity cracked. The glitter she loved dulled until only the truth remained. I did not cheer. I did not celebrate. I sat in my chair at night, drinking tea, wearing the same coat she mocked. It felt warmer than ever. Because now, respect had returned to its place. Not in words, not in apologies, but in the lesson she would carry each time she reached for a card that no longer worked. The fallout was quiet, but complete. She had mocked me at Christmas dinner. The next day, her credit cards were canceled. That was not cruelty. That was consequence. The days after the Christmas dinner changed everything. My daughter, once so loud with pride, now walked quieter. Her phone calls became fewer. Her voice, once sharp, grew softer, strained, always asking, never commanding. She tried to live as before, but the world no longer answered her the same way. The friends who clapped at her parties stopped coming. The invitations she loved to show off began to dry up. She said she was busy, but the truth was simple. She could not pay, and people could see it. The girl who laughed at my coat now wore the weight of shame on her shoulders. Bills began to pile. Without my accounts feeding her life, she learned how heavy a single piece of paper could feel. First, it was the electric bill, then the phone. The subscription services she thought would always be there. Gone. The fancy clothes she paraded soon lost their shine when she had no money to buy new ones. Her closet, once full, began to look smaller. She wore the same dress more than once, something she used to laugh at others for. Now the mirror laughed back at her. Relatives noticed the change. They whispered at family gatherings, spoke in low voices, shook their heads. They remembered the night she mocked me, and they saw the justice play out quietly. They no longer defended her. They no longer cheered her. Even those who once joined her laughter looked at me with new respect. They saw the old coat differently now, not as weakness, but as a reminder of strength that had lasted through years she could not survive a day of. Neighbors noticed too. She once stood tall in the driveway, greeting them with a smile, showing off her new car, her new shoes, her glittering rings. Now she rushed inside, head down, afraid of questions. They whispered, they guessed, they shared stories. Her father cut her off, they said. The card stopped working. Truth travels fast, and soon she felt it everywhere. In every glance, every silence, every door that did not open when she knocked. Her pride crumbled. She came to me more than once, asking for help, begging with words that cracked her voice. But she never said sorry. She never looked me in the eye and admitted what she had done. She wanted the money back, not the respect. That is why I stayed silent. I could forgive hunger. I could forgive failure. But I could not forgive mockery without regret. Respect is the one debt a child must always pay, and she refused, so I refused too. I watched her learn slowly. Each time she tried a card and saw declined, it was a lesson. Each time a friend pulled away, it was a lesson. Each time she sat in her car with tears in her eyes, it was a lesson. These lessons cost nothing for me to give, but they cost her everything to receive. She thought her world was built on her own charm, but it was built on the old hands she mocked. Now those hands had let go. At night, I sat in my chair and looked at the coat she laughed at. It still fit me. It still kept me warm. It had walked through winters, worked through storms, bent under weight, but never broke. Her laughter could not strip it of its worth. If anything, it made it stronger. Because while her world crumbled when the cards stopped, mine stayed the same. My coat was old, but it was honest. Hers was new, but it was false. Now the false had burned away. The aftermath was quiet, but it was final. She no longer laughed at me. She no longer mocked the coat. She no longer called me poor. She knew now what poverty felt like, not as a joke, but as a truth. She learned that comfort without respect dies fast. She learned that money without humility turns to dust. And she learned that a father, even in silence, holds a power greater than her vanity. I did not celebrate. I did not dance on her ruins. But I felt lighter. I felt free. I felt that the balance had been restored. My silence had spoken louder than any argument. My action had cut deeper than any insult. She mocked me at Christmas dinner, but the lesson she carried afterward will last longer than any laugh. I still wear the same old coat. The one she mocked. The one she thought was shameful. I put it on each morning, and it feels heavier with memory, but lighter with truth. It has carried me through winters, through long days of work, through storms, through hunger. It carries my dignity, not my poverty. My daughter could never understand that. She measured worth in shoes and parties, in dresses and cards. But now she has none of them. And I still have my coat. She walks smaller these days. I see it in her shoulders, in the way she avoids neighbors, in the way her voice trembles when she speaks. She no longer brags. She no longer mocks. She no longer smirks. Pride has been peeled away, layer by the silence I gave her. She used to think I was powerless. Now she knows power does not shout. Power waits. Power acts when the moment comes. I did not ruin her. She ruined herself the night she laughed at me in front of everyone. She planted the seed of her own fall with her words. All I did was remind her where her life came from. All I did was close the hand that had been open too long. She thought her cards were hers. She thought her comfort was hers. She forgot the truth. And when the truth arrived, it stripped her of every illusion. I sit in my chair now, the house quiet, the tree lights dim. I think of Christmas dinners past, when she was young, when she sat beside me and held my hand. I think of the years I worked, the years I gave up so she could have more. And I wonder where that little girl went. The woman she became chose vanity over respect, cruelty over gratitude. That choice led her here. That choice left her empty. I do not cheer, I do not celebrate. I feel no joy in her fall. Justice is not joy. Justice is balance. Justice is cold. Justice is necessary. She mocked me for old clothes. She forgot who gave her everything. And so I showed her. Not with shouting, not with anger, with silence, with a call, with the quiet removal of power she thought was hers. Now she knows. Every time she sees a declined message, she remembers. Every time she feels the sting of being turned away, she remembers. Every time she looks at me in this old coat, she remembers. Respect is not free. Respect must be given. She denied me mine, so I denied her hers. That is the law I live by now. Final thought. She mocked my old clothes at Christmas dinner. The next day her credit card was canceled. That is not a story of cruelty. That is a story of justice. True story.